And we are live with episode 161 of the Start, Build, Grow Show. Randy Brothers, my friend, what's going on? How we doing?
What is up, Nick? What is up, Taylor? What is up, Facebook? We're back after a week off. Man, living the dream, man. One of my personal mottos in life, I guess I've been kind of working on like a personal mission statement. It's one of them is work hard, play hard. So this summer has been a lot of that, which is definitely challenging for the balance standpoint, but it's been a great summer, man. A lot of work, a lot of things happening, a lot of great trips and family time. So, man, I'm feeling good, ready to go. 161 episodes in, and we still got at least 4 or 5 people that'll watch or listen. No, man, the numbers keep going up, which is awesome, and we were grateful for the support. So, if you're just now tuning in, you haven't checked our show out or haven't listened to the podcast, we love your feedback. Leave us a comment, leave us a message, shoot us a DM, and make sure to click that like and subscribe button if you're watching on Facebook. Click the button that notifies you when we go live. And then if you're listening to the podcast, make sure to subscribe and check out some of the other shows. We got 161 of them. And today we got another awesome guest. As many of you know, in the world of roofing, obviously we talk a lot about roofing. Um, if you're not working in the commercial space, if you're not looking into large loss, if you're not trying to chase that sort of work, it's only a matter of time before you figure out that that's important to at least try to get your hands in at least a couple of those sort of projects a year, and or trying to diversify your business. I mean, if you have all your eggs in one basket, and then you run into a situation with no storms, or you lose key people, you can find yourself in trouble. So as a firm believer in diversifying your roofing business, commercial is a major point of that. And in order to get into the commercial, space and commercial insurance restoration space, you've got to partner with the right people. You've got to bring in professionals. And my man Taylor is as good as it gets from a professional public adjusting perspective with the C3 Group, a longtime supporter of the show. We appreciate you. We appreciate C3 Group. Been great partners for us for quite a while, and it's awesome to finally get the man, the myth, the legend, Taylor Bezek on. Man, what's up, buddy? Thanks for coming.
Not much. Thank you guys for having me. I'm really stoked to be here. I've been watching the show for a long time. And happy to be a guest.
You haven't missed an episode, have you? You've
Not
watched every
one.
single one on live, and then you listen to the podcast to do a quick recap when you're driving to wherever you're going that week, right?
It's what I fall asleep to every night.
Yeah,
Actually, yeah.
Zach. Some people read
We're
books.
that boring.
Yeah, yes.
Oh man, forget white noise. Let's just put on the Start of a Grow Show. It'll put me to sleep.
No, it just
Yeah.
absorbs through osmosis into my
Absorbs, man.
brain. Yeah.
He's just absorbing knowledge. He's absorbing knowledge for sure. Well, Taylor, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate you being here as a guest. So we always like to kind of go in the background and whatnot, learn a little bit about you before we go into the show. So were you born in Colorado? Did you move out here? What's your background there?
No, I'm a fellow Midwesterner like yourself. I was born in Minnesota, actually.
Minnesota.
So I came to Colorado by way of Montana, Seattle, and then I had a cousin who was running a restoration roofing company here, and I was kind of in between jobs, career paths, and he, for better or worse, I guess for better now, coerced me into coming out to Colorado. I mean, I like skiing, I like playing hockey, so it seemed like a good fit, and I knew nothing about the industry at that point, and got on with him. Managed to meet Matt Behrens and the C3 guys back when they were, actually only three people. It was Matt, his partner, and then his brother Andrew, who you guys are really familiar with.
Yep.
Was knocking doors, selling roofs, and met those guys, and they settled a bunch of wood shake claims for me, which I thought were the holy grail at the time. And then the rest is kind of history. I was like, well, I'm on the wrong side of this. I like what you guys are doing a heck of a lot better. So I jumped on.
So it was the Minnesota guy who liked skiing and playing hockey, and that brought him out over here, and then he started selling roofs. So how was selling roofs, and how was that time when you were actually selling roofs?
You know, it was a different time, first off. I mean, that was 10 years ago, so summer of 2011, maybe 2012 was when I was selling roofs, so actually knocking doors. And we had a huge hailstorm that hit Castle Rock and then all the way up through, the east side of the Denver metro. And I focused specifically on Castle Rock and specifically on wood shake roofs because no one else was knocking them. And of course, they were all getting denied. But everyone was super happy to, let me hop on their roof and tell them to file a claim and all this other stuff because all the other roofers were skipping it. And I was like, well, let's hone in on these things because I had heard that these roofs were, X amount of dollars per square. Like these were the money makers if you can get them bought. And I was like, whoa, they got hit with 2-inch hail. I mean, why wouldn't they get bought, And found out pretty quick that, there were these internal arbitrary guidelines that the carriers followed for adjusting these losses and they just all got denied. Um, and that's how I met Matt and his partner at the time, Mike, and they knocked them all out, got them all settled for me, and that's when I decided to switch over. But it's tough, man. It's demoralizing. It's a grind. You'll go all afternoon and all evening getting no, 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 no until someone lets you jump on their roof, and if you see good damage, you're like, heck yeah, let's sign it up and go. But it was a slog for sure.
Absolutely. Well, you earned your stripes to get into the roofing industry, I feel like.
Yeah. I definitely empathize for the guys that are out there pounding the pavement, knocking the doors. It's a high level of perseverance. And then to be able to close after all that and get ink on paper and get a claim going, it's rewarding, but it's definitely tough.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
It's a very rewarding, lucrative business, but you got to have the right mindset and the right attitude, and you got to be willing to really put the work in to make it happen to be super successful with it, right?
Yeah,
It's funny, but I got into the same thing where I didn't know, I had no clue what I was doing. There's like, just go knock doors and sell roofs. Here's some, some pamphlets, figure it out. And just talking with the other people, they're like, yeah, man, if you can get the wood shakes and you can get the tri-lambs, like those are the money makers. I'm like, all right, let's go do that. And the same type of situation. I was like, let's go figure out what the best opportunities are and let's go. I mean, it's the same effort for a 3-tab as it is a wood shake. Why not go after the wood shake,
exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like the stars kind of have to align. You have to have the storm. You got to have the damage. You got to have the person that's interested, and then they got to have the policy that affords the coverage to indemnify them for the loss for you to ultimately get paid. I mean, you know, it's always framed as go knock doors, sign everyone up, collect your fee checks after the work's done, after the build's done. But there's way more that goes into it. And when I say it was a different time, like what we're starting to see now is all of these prohibitive policy provisions and language that are effectively writing out the coverage that restoration contractors make their margins on, which is it's tough. Makes it even tougher.
So for like example, these wood shake, why were these wood shake roofs getting denied?
So it was really arbitrary. So and I don't know because I haven't worked a wood shake claim now and God knows how long, but back then it was what they needed to see was a hail hit, and a corresponding split if you were claiming hail. So the textbook definition of that in the insurance carrier's eyes was that you'd see what they wanted to see was a pit in the middle of the shake with it split open with fresh yellow wood showing underneath because these wood shakes in this climate they oxidize, they weather, so they're all grayed out most of the time when you see them. You never see a brand new wood shake roof on. But what would happen is a lot of these shakes they would get dented, they'd get chipped on the edges, they'd get cracked but not broken in half, and the carriers would come out and they say, no hit and split, I'm not paying for it. Well, what we started to do and where we got a lot of traction, not so much on the contractor side, but as a public adjuster when I started working wood shake claims was, you know, you'd have an adjuster, an IA, whoever the carrier representative was, walking around the property, paying for things on the elevation like window glazing bead that's dented, downspouts that are dented, gutters that are dented. Most of these roofs had metal valleys, which were also dented. Flue caps, HVAC top panels, like all these metal components that were dented, and they'd write up an estimate for gutters, downs, vents, screens, flashings, things like that, but they wouldn't pay for the same type of damage on a wood shake roof. And what you come back to me and you say is there's no cosmetic exclusion in this policy. And you're paying for non-functional damage on metal components. I could actually make more of a functional argument, even though I don't have to, for the damage that would shake. Because of that dent, water is going to pool in that, and over time, it's going to erode and degrade at a faster rate. The same thing can't be said for your gutters and your downspouts, but in the same breath, you went out and paid for those. And the only reason that I can figure out why is because those don't cost nearly as much as a whole roof replacement would. So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of catch them in their own trap where it's like you have a double standard on site where they're going around and paying for not they're paying for cosmetic damage to certain components, but then citing functional damage as the reason why they're not paying for other things.
Mm-hmm. Randy, does that sound familiar?
I didn't get that technical. I always found the right. You know what I mean? I was a salesperson, man. I'm a visionary salesperson. I'll go sell, and I always had good supplementers and good PAs and whoever else to help me out with it. I would be like, here it is, you figure it out. I'm going to the next one. I'm going to go write the next
So
deal.
pass it on. Pass it on to somebody
Yeah.
like Taylor over here, is what you're saying. I like it. Well, so one of the main things we wanted to talk about today was how roofing companies can implement a policy-driven sales approach. So can you guys give us an overview of really what that means and what that entails?
Yeah. So, there's always this kind of back and forth in the industry about, contractors having a hands-off approach to policy because of the UPPA stuff, as much nonsense as that is. But, the policy is the primary governing document for how a claim gets settled. And it's ultimately the checkbook by which you as a contractor or restoration contractors get paid. And while you cannot sit on site and bicker back and forth or even bring up applicable coverage with an adjuster, I mean, your job is just point out damage and give recommendations on what an appropriate repair are. But before you advise someone to file a claim or endeavor on selling someone and, being their advocate in an insurance claim situation, I think it's absolutely prudent from a return on investment for your time standpoint to get your hands on the policy and take a look at it and just have a very cursory knowledge of what the coverages are, what the exclusions are, what the endorsements are, and what those mean from a practical standpoint when it comes to the settlement of a claim. Because, you know, those what we're seeing now, and it's kind of a disturbing trend, is that carriers are effectively through multiple ways writing out the most common perils, like wind and hail, basically. So hurricanes, hail, fire has always been, pretty much written out of policies unless, you're in certain areas. But, wind and hail is becoming one of those things that through prohibitive policy language, they're trying to neuter from being able to be indemnified for. And when you're talking about someone that's going out and soliciting for those specific perils, like knocking doors and saying, hey, you've had a loss, let me take a look at your roof. you know I feel like contractors that we see, they focus really heavily on the damage and how it manifests itself on property, and they'll get down off of a roof or they'll get done walking a property and they'll go back to the insurer and say, yeah, you have extensive damage, you need to file an insurance claim, your insurance company will pay for this repair, we'll do the work. Well, the other side of that is, does their policy actually afford them the coverage to do the work appropriately and get them paid? And I think that's an important differentiator for a lot of restoration contractors to be able to go up and say, hey, you know what, you do have really good damage or really extensive damage, but let me take a peek at your policy just to make sure that I'm not advising you to file a claim that's not going to get you what you need. Or at least let them know how far is their policy going to get them towards the pursuit of a new roof, new siding, gutters, whatever it might be that's damaged, and then approach it from that standpoint. Because, it's two things. It's your time. You don't want to waste a bunch of time, squeezing fruit that's not going to give you the juice. And two, you don't want to tarnish your reputation by misinforming your insured by telling them that, oh, no doubt, we do this all the time, the insurance company's definitely going to pay for this. So you can protect your reputation and probably enhance your reputation by being the one contractor out of 25 that knocked the door and actually asked questions about how they're going to get paid and how the insurance company is going to indemnify the loss. And two, you're not wasting the time. You can move on to the next one, say, hey, I'm sorry, maybe we can do a retail bid, maybe we offer financing, things like that. But what I'm seeing based on a cursory review of your policy is that between your deductible and this endorsement, there's effectively no coverage because it's overlapping from both sides.
That's so. Is the property owner usually pretty surprised when they find out that their policy actually does not protect them from wind and hail, or is that something that they know about when they sign up for that policy?
Um, I would say it's 50-50.
Yeah.
It depends. I mean, some some insureds, like, we're running into it a lot in Texas right now. And the reason that this is front of my mind is that at C3, one of my main jobs is vetting and qualifying claims, and part of that is a review of the policy. And what we're seeing is that sometimes they're like, "Oh yeah, we knew about those endorsements. We paid to have lower premiums to have those endorsements." And it's like, well, that means that in this instance, you have zero coverage for this peril. And they'll be like, "Okay, no worries. We just wanted to check." But other people, I think residential homeowners, they're not going to know because they get a renewal packet and they buy their insurance from their frat buddy or, one of their colleagues or someone that they know. And all they really care about a lot of the time is their premiums and their bottom
Yours is
line and what they're
cheapest.
paying annually. So,
Hmm.
you know, and we're seeing those, everyone's seeing the percentage deductibles creep up higher and higher and higher. And we're starting to see these endorsements, these cosmetic endorsements, ACV endorsements over roofs over a certain age. Um, what else? Pre-existing damage exclusions, where a carrier can come out and unilaterally say that, oh yeah, we think that this damage happened before the date of loss, even though we insured you on a replacement cost value basis. If we come out
Jeez.
after a loss and decide that there's damage that predated this loss, we don't owe for it. So that's the type of stuff that gets snuck in. And a lot of times these insureds aren't getting full policies upon renewal. They're getting a renewal packet that is basically a, create your own ending story where it says, you know, in duties after a loss, subsection 2A B3 reads, this is now this instead of this is now that. And they would have to go back to their full certified policy, find that page, input new language, and, interpret it however they can.
Wow. So okay. So at what point, if you're the contractor, if you're the roofing salesperson, should you be asking to look at that policy in the sales process?
I would say, as soon as you get done doing an inspection or in advance of an inspection, I understand that's sometimes unrealistic when you're talking about door to door soliciting, but
Hmm.
it's even something just to bring up. If say you do an inspection, you get down, they have, good manifested damage. It's within the storm zone. You have good weather data. That last variable is verifying that there's coverage. And really it's just saying, hey, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, I'd like to take a look at the declarations of your policy just to make sure that you're not filing a claim that you don't have coverage for. Most people do, it's not a big deal, but in the interest of my time and your time, let's take a look at that just to make sure that we're not filing a claim that, is going to be frivolous for everybody.
Hmm. It is interesting though, because you say it changes your sales process quite a bit, right? Because if they do have damage, obviously they're still going to have to get that fixed. So you're probably going to have to target that at a retail standpoint. So it definitely changes your sales approach and makes. I think the customer definitely appreciates it too.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, in our space, in the sales, highly competitive sales, business, you got to do whatever you can to differentiate yourself. And a lot of people have very little to no training. And the
Hmm.
more, as a salesperson, if you're watching this as a salesperson, the more you can educate yourself with these sort of details, to where you can educate your homeowners, the more professional you are, and the much more opportunities you're going to have to close deals, and to solidify really solid relationships with your clients, because you're not just regurgitating the same 15-minute pitch over and over and over. You're actually, serving their needs, and answering questions that other people, that one, can't even answer, and two, aren't even going to take the time to educate the consumer on. So if you're
Hmm.
sitting, looking at the declaration, and if you know the ins and outs of some of the things that might be covered and might not be covered, the more you can educate yourself on that, the better and stronger you're going to be in sales. So yeah, I mean, this the information on this show right now
Yeah,
is
it's big for
huge
sure.
for salespeople. I mean, these are the things that you don't learn until 2, 3, 4 years into the business, or you find you get in with somebody that helps you learn this stuff. But this is huge.
What should they be looking for specifically? Like, do you have any advice on, okay, I have the policy now, right? The customer's policy. What should I be looking for?
So really the most important part is the declarations, and that's going to outline, the limits of liability, the deductibles, and then the applicable endorsements. And really the two biggest or three biggest ones is obviously you always want to make sure that they have replacement cost benefits in their policy. That means they're getting old for new, a betterment policy more or less. The second is you want to look at the deductible. And if it's it might, a lot of times they'll say, $1,000 deductible except for wind and hail, and then it'll be a percentage. And that percentage is a percentage of the total insured value of the property. So, if you have a $100,000 property with a 5% deductible, your deductible is $5,000. And just making them aware of that, because a lot of times insureds won't even be aware of that. They'll say, oh, my deductible's $1,000, unless it's a wind or a hailstorm, then it's 5,000. Which, from a sales standpoint, if you're selling, doing this work and you're saying, well, your only responsibility is your deductible, we're going to take care of the rest based on what the insurance company pays. If you're going back to collect and they think they're paying 1,000, but they're actually paying 5 times more than that, that can create a headache or a rift down the road. So just being aware of that and explaining to them on the front end. And then the other, and probably the most important part, is taking a look at the endorsements. And even if you don't have a full policy, if it's just a declarations page, it'll list the endorsements. And the title of the endorsement is usually a pretty good paraphrase of what the endorsement is. And a lot of times you'll see, like in Texas, we're running into, ACV endorsement on roof surfaces over a certain age, or ACV on all roof surfaces, regardless of age. But, then you got to look at it and say, you're getting actual cash value for your roofing components. And it's very important to look at, what does roof surface mean? Does it mean just the shingles? Does it mean shingles, nails, sheathing, decking, or felt decking? Does it mean everything in the roof system? Because you can kind of gauge at that point, like, how much am I getting depreciated on versus, other components in a roof system? And you can kind of start to game out, like, what's your best day? What's your worst day when it comes to settling this claim? The other big ones are cosmetic endorsements for roof surfaces. So you'll see that on pretty much metal. Every metal roof now has a cosmetic roof endorsement, and it's good to get into the language of that. But basically, the spirit is that unless there's a hole through the roof, you're going to have a hard time getting the carrier to come out and pay for, hail damage to a metal roof. I'm trying to think. And then obviously the wind and hail deductibles, they'll have usually their own scheduled endorsement. But if you just peruse through the endorsements and look for ones that pertain to the peril specific to what you're claiming, I'm guessing most people watching this are dealing with wind and hail claims. ACV or cosmetic endorsements, and then deductible stuff are the biggest ones. Because if you have a policy that combines a high percentage deductible, and you see this a lot in hurricane claims, they'll have these named storm deductibles that are just astronomical. And then if you couple that with an ACV endorsement on roofs over, let's say roofs over 15 years, and it's an asphalt shingle, you say if it's over 15 years, it's about 50% through its serviceable life. So if you have ACV on that, you're getting 50 cents on the dollar depreciated off of the value of the roof system or the components that they are claiming are ACV, and you're also getting hit on the other end with a super high deductible. And while the insured's responsible for their deductible, if you're looking at it as you're getting a small cross section of money out of the insurance carrier based on, them trimming it down on both ends, it does sway whether or not it's economically viable to take the job.
So are you seeing this in residential and commercial properties then to the same kind of issue?
I can't speak, very well to what the residential policies are doing now. I know that I'm handling one fire claim in Grand Lake right now, and they have a percentage deductible and it's 5%, which is crazy to me. I have seen the cosmetic endorsements on residential properties if they have a metal roof, and I haven't seen the I haven't dealt with one where I've seen the ACV on roofs over a certain age, but in Texas, it seems like it's pretty pervasive. Like it seems like it's a pretty common endorsement that's getting into these policies, and it really conditions, you know, how you get around, actually doing the work at the end of the day, because most people don't have, 50% of a roof's value to come up with.
Right.
Yeah. And then you got to work, to combat that. You got to deal with financing and see if they have the money to do all that. And then another one I would add to this, I guess to the main things to be looking for is code compliance, right? I mean, that's the other provision is limitations there, especially on a commercial claim. We ran into that a number of times where they have a max of say 20 grand in code compliance and there's $50,000 in code. You have to really, get creative to try to get those things covered.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's another big one is ordinance and law coverage, and where that falls, and how much is afforded. Because yeah, especially with, commercial roofs, and you're dealing with flat roofs that usually have significant code upgrades, specifically from, an energy efficiency standpoint. You got to be very aware of, what you're dealing with or what you have at your disposal for ordinance and law upgrades.
So, since you guys have been in the industry, how much more complicated do you think that dealing with insurance claims has gotten? Is it like in terms of verbiage and all these, different little details that you got to be looking for? Has it changed a lot, or has it been pretty similar, since you've been in the game?
It's kind of a double-edged sword. I and selfishly, it's been good for our industry because as it's gotten more difficult and more complicated, there's been more of a niche or a void for us to fill in being a representative for insureds. Because, I mean, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, and even doing what I'm doing, I still run into stuff where I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I'll read policy language and I'll be like, I don't know what this means. And I'll have to go call an attorney to be like, how would you interpret this? So from that standpoint, it's it's gotten more difficult. And the way that insurance companies handle adjustment of claims, specifically commercial claims, has made it much more difficult, because you not only have these policy provisions that are more restrictive and prohibitive, but you also have situations where you're not meeting an adjuster anymore. You're meeting a TPA, an engineer, and a building consultant, none of which have any authority to do anything. And the TPA is actually just kind of sending recommendations up to the carrier, who's ultimately just a checkbook. So it's really hard to get through the bureaucracy to get someone that you can actually influence and effectuate positive change in a claim. Um, Part of me thinks that some of these restrictive policy, provisions in the language is good because it's more specific. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get out of paying for certain things by using specificity in the language. But once they do that, they can't be as subjective with what they pay for and what they don't pay for. It's like you put a very clear definition in your policy of what's excluded or what this means, and what you're saying isn't covered does not match up with that language, which gives us as public adjusters a little more latitude to, work around it and try to help resolve the issue.
Hmm. What do you think, Randy?
It's I mean it's every year it's like it seems like you have to reset your knowledge, right? You got to every year you got to like look for, all right, what's changed? I mean, every carrier is doing different things. They got much better lawyers and much deeper pockets than we do, so they're doing everything they can to pay less, and provide more profit for their shareholders. And us as contractors, we're just the little guy that has to kind of band together to kind of help learn from each other. I mean, and that's where being part of groups and watching this show and being and hiring companies and being involved heavily in the industry is a great way to kind of help stay up with the changes, because it changes so fast. I mean,
Yeah.
there's constant adjustments and changes to these policies and into the way they do things. I mean, tomorrow morning they could have a management meeting internally at one of the big carriers and say, all right, well, and I know this for a fact in certain areas, I just talked to a guy, there's a certain insurance carrier that literally in a specific area of town, they're like, we deny everything. Doesn't
I
matter.
think we know.
Deny everything. And we're
I
like,
think we know what that carrier is.
yeah. Rhymes with hate.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I would be keenly interested to hear, because I'm admittedly out of touch with, what's going on from adjusting and policy practices on the residential side, just because my exposure to those aren't as much as they used to be. But I would assume kind of the same, shell game is going on there as well, with, policy provisions changing and ebbing and flowing, and internal carrier adjusting practices changing and evolving and shifting. It's kind of one of those things where, USAA is the best company one year and maybe not so much the next year, or Chubb's always good. Like, you hear different, it's always a horse race between market share and who's the best or the worst, respectively, with these insurance companies and how they're handling claims. It's not consistent.
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can kind of watch the commercials, and whoever's spending the most on commercials and claiming to have the cheapest insurance rates, they're the ones that aren't paying crap.
Absolutely.
Every year,
There's definitely a direct correlation there.
Yeah.
There's definitely a direct correlation there. Well, hey, I want to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. But then from there, I do want to dive into some other things that you guys are seeing with insurance claims and any kind of recent industry news that people should be kind of thinking about, in the sales process and just for their company in general. And we can kind of go into like the benefits of a good public adjuster. But first, we'll go with our headline sponsor, Job Nimbus.
Job Nimbus is a fully customizable back office solution.
Track leads, jobs, tasks from one easy-to-use software.
And with the largest ecosystem of integrated partners, if we don't do it, we have a friend who does.
Learn how the #1 back office system in roofing
can help you be efficient, be organized, be professional, and be profitable.
So if you guys somehow have not checked out Job Nimbus quite yet, make sure you guys are checking them out at info.jobnimbus.com/roofing-academy. We have seen so many different companies implement their technology and just make their life that much easier and their business that much more efficient. So also another big issue we run into is people taking too long with proposals, right? And they want to be more efficient with that as well. Well, this tool actually does integrate with Job Nimbus. Are you looking to stand out with your proposal? Sumo Quote is the contractor quote that crushes the competition. It is the fastest way to build custom quotes that impresses clients and wins more work. It's one of those must-have technologies for roofing contractors, allowing them to sell faster, sell more, and sell smarter. Be sure to check them out at try.sumoquote.com/start-build-grow. All right, and our last sponsor, we got our boy Taylor here, C3 Group. I figured I'd give you the floor. We've had multiple people from C3 Group on the show. We've met a bunch of you guys. You guys are all super, super cool. Also very smart. I mean, Randy, every time we have one of these people on the show, you're gonna be like, "Wow, that's pretty high level stuff." Yeah, I try to keep up. But no, always great stuff. So Taylor, what's the best way to reach you, and what's the best situation or some situations that's ideally to reach out to you guys?
I always tell most of our referral work and most of the business we get is from restoration contractors, obviously. And, we're really interested in being a resource. So, reach out to us. I don't know if you guys are going to share my email and stuff
For
on
sure.
this or not, but you can reach out to me directly. I'm the vice president of sales at C3 Group, and my job is primarily to vet, qualify, and provide help on claim situations or anything like that. So even if it's something that we're generally isn't a good fit for us to help with, we'll always take a look at stuff and for better or worse give our 2 cents and at least provide some direction and put you in touch with the right people or resources that can help. In claim situations, we always want to get brought in earlier. Earlier is better. And the contractors that we work really well with are able to identify that, this is going to be, a serious undertaking from a claim standpoint. And most of what we handle are commercial claims, multifamily, HOA, industrial properties. So the earlier that we get brought on, what we can do again is take time off of the contractor's plate or the salesperson's plate to not have to go and, be the custodian of that claim firsthand. They can hand it off to us. We can put together a full representation of loss, proof of loss. We can call in the claim. We can set the expectations with the carrier and meet the carrier on site, do all that stuff. Meanwhile, you're out inking more huge deals, making more money. Everyone's happy. we keep you involved in client facing throughout the process. And then ideally, we settle it for a number that's good for all the stakeholders. The insured's happy because they're getting brought back to pre-loss condition. Contractor's happy because they're making their margins, and we're happy because we're getting a fee on the deal. And then we hand it back over to y'all, and you guys do the work. And then it's rinse and repeat, ideally. So the earlier the better. Really, all we ever need is, photos of damage, a policy, if we can get our hands on it, obviously, and whatever information you got. And, if it's not something we'll jump on and take as public adjusters, we will, do everything we can to put you in touch with, resources that can help you, give you resources at our disposal that can help you and your insured. It's always about weaponizing information, and we've got a lot of it, and we're happy to give it out for free. So reach out. We're, I think, Randy, I was just talking to one of your guys today about a West tile roof that had some like ice dam issue or something like that. And we cut it up for a little bit, and, not something that we would jump on per se, but hopefully I helped him out.
I'm sure you did. Some of them are watching. I already shared it with our group. I wanted to touch base on one of the things we talked about right before the break. If you do run into that situation where a carrier just blatantly just denies, right? Even if, and you see that, man, you're like, why are they denying? There's plenty of visible damage here. You feel strongly that there is damage. What they're doing is basically trying to weed out and trying to play the odds of the customer and or the roofer that's just going to let it go right then and there. So that does not mean they're not willing and able to pay the claim. That just means that they're trying to vet out and get rid of the people that scares away from a situation. So what they're really looking for and what they're going to say internally is, we never got a scope, we never got anything from the contractor, that sort of thing. So we just denied it and we're moving on. So it's your responsibility, and you have the opportunity, whether you can do it yourself or you partner with somebody that can help you, write the scope up in its entirety, send it in with a secondary request, and that's going to get you a much better opportunity to get that claim approved.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So is there any other things that you think specifically right now have been kind of news in the insurance claims, industry or space, if you will? Anything that's kind of standing out, anything that people should maybe just keep an eye open about?
I can't cite anything specifically, but, Randy alluded to it earlier, where there's these, it's these internal arbitrary adjusting guidelines where you see carriers just making sweeping decisions not to pay for roofs, for anything. And they say, we're going to deny everything, and we're going to play the war of attrition and the race to the bottom. Time and money are on our side, and we'll see what happens. And it's just a straight up economic business practice to say that they believe that 90 out of 100 people aren't even going to question it. They're going to say, oh, that's a bummer, I don't have coverage for that. The other 10 might make a couple phone calls, and then of those 10, maybe 2 or 3 will get representation. And maybe of those 3, an attorney will actually want to take it and fight it, especially on the residential side. We're fortunate in Colorado because we have good bad faith laws that kind of hold a stick above the carriers' heads and force them to act in somewhat constructive good faith. But I think that's one of the biggest trends I've been hearing lately, and I've been hearing it from a lot of contractors where they're running into X insurance company and are getting flat out told that, oh, we don't pay for this, or I've been told we don't pay for this, just flat out without any sort of substantiation behind it. And then they'll go and say that to the insured, and the insured sitting there like, well, what am I paying for then? So that's been frustrating to hear.
What about geographically too? I sorry to cut you off, but geographically, what do you think? Is there any trends that you see that are like certain states, even with the same company, but in a different state, they act differently or anything like that?
The more hail claims, the more likely this sort of thing is going to happen. I mean,
yeah, that's what I figured.
At some point in time, the higher ups say, all right, we got to stop the bleeding and minimize the expenses going out in this particular area. So these are the changes we're making to mitigate that.
Yeah, I would say another kind of disturbing trend we're seeing is the legislation in Florida and possibly in Texas to really try to extricate contractors from being involved in the claims process whatsoever. And And what's frustrating or concerning about that is usually what happens in Florida, Texas, so goes the rest of the country. So, those are the two major flashpoints for our industry as far as, what we have latitude to do as public adjusters and what you guys have latitude to do as contractors. And the whole spirit of a lot of this legislation is to divide and conquer, to basically alienate the insured, knowing that they are probably the one that has the least intimate knowledge of insurance policies and the construction of their property. And, you know, basically separate them and divide them from their advocates, being the contractors and the public adjusters, and forcing them to go to litigation when they know that there's a lot of attorneys that aren't going to touch claims under a certain dollar amount, because if your state doesn't have, fee shifting or good legislature to, prompt carriers to come to the mediation table, that they won't even get to an attorney. So it's a way to, basically castrate insured's recourse to get a fair settlement, which is, when you look at Texas and Florida specifically, it's troubling because they are, they set the bar a lot of times for the rest of the country.
It's pretty wild. I mean, okay, so what about, one thing first off, that is very, very crazy to think about. So is there anything, before we move on, actually, is there anything that contractors can kind of do to kind of help with that, or I guess the industry as a whole can do to kind of help with something like that or stopping that?
Just get involved with trade organizations that are lobbying to prevent, these bills from going through. There's quite a few of them out there. There's the APA, AAA. There's a bunch of other trade organizations that are, headed up by attorneys and, industry leaders that are working to block a lot of these initiatives to kind of stop contractors and public adjusters, for that matter, from being, really involved in affecting positive change in these claims. And they're doing it all on the grounds that, they have, I'm saying the people that are trying to stop us from doing what we do, is they're doing it on the grounds that they believe that we are driving up premiums. They're selling it to insureds that restoration contractors and public adjusters and even plaintiffs attorneys are driving up premiums because of all of the unnecessary fluff and litigation and all this overhead that they're burdening the insurance companies with, and thus people's premiums are going up. Meanwhile, you're watching football every Sunday being played in MetLife Stadium, or, with every commercial is an insurance commercial. It's like you're just not making, the problem is they're not making as much money, and that's not a product of what we do. It's a product of there being more frequent and severe natural disasters happening all the time. It's a year-round phenomenon. And they see people like contractors, public adjusters, and plaintiffs attorneys as a threat to, ever increasing, profits.
And you nailed it, man. At the end of the day, it's all about profit, right? I mean, these are publicly traded companies, and you know what they care about? Their shareholders.
Absolutely.
Simple as that. I mean, they care about their shareholders, and they care about making sure that Aaron Rodgers gets his paycheck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it is what it is, and we have to band together and get with those programs. APA. I think what's the one that you guys are really closely associated with?
The American Adjuster Association, AAA. Yep.
AAA.
And their main platform is trying to get the same sort of fee shifting regulations for public adjusters and contractors. So it'd be a really good benefit for contractors if we effectuate positive change and increase the scope and cost of or scope and price of a claim. The insurance company ideally would ultimately be on the hook for our fees and not the insured. So that's the main lobbying that's going on with AAA. I know that APA is primarily focused on, going after engineers, which is great because, you talk about trends in the industry. The amount of reliance on third-party administrators and engineers is just, it's so frustrating. It is increased cycle times exponentially. And these guys don't read the policy. They don't have any understanding of what's covered and what's not covered. The definitions they're using for what constitutes damage is not synonymous with what's in the policy. And what happens is these carriers read the conclusions that say, well, it's not damaged, and then they deny a claim. And now you're untying that ball of wires to try to get to, what does your policy cover? What was on site? but it's just really frustrating.
Yep.
So,
And around
so
and around we go.
I put
Absolutely.
I put the Facebook page for the American Adjuster Association and the website in the comments. And so the website for people on the podcast is AmericanAdjusterAssociation.org. And then I also put your email in here. So Taylor@c3adjusters.com.
Right
Cool.
on.
Awesome. Do you guys have any thoughts on where everything is kind of going? I mean, it's hard to predict the future, but just with the relationship with the contractor and insurance company, any kind of trends that you might be forecasting? I know it's a tougher one, but
It's really hard to say because I feel like it ebbs and flows and capitulates so much, and it's very subjective. I mean,
mhm,
it's all about, the health and the solvency of these insurance companies because at the end of the day, all of our paychecks come from these insurance carriers. And I hope that, things start to become more reasonable as some of these cases and claims and litigation start to settle out, and good case law gets built in places like Florida and Texas, and some of these initiatives don't go through. um, but like I said before, it's kind of a double-edged sword because the more difficult it gets to settle an insurance claim, the more you need a public adjuster. So from that standpoint, it's good, it's job security. But from a cycle time and ease of resolution and expectation setting for our clients, it becomes a lot more difficult. So it's really hard to say. I think that facts are facts, and we have a really good investigation staff and our work product and our estimates, and all that stuff is locked tight. So I think we're still going to be able to carry on and do what we do, just as there's always going to be a need for a contractor to go and do this work. So it, it, it's a two-sided thing because we're seeing more and more frequency of severe weather events. Um, but the other side of that is the carriers are being a lot more discriminate with what they're paying for and how they're paying it.
mhm. We have Jake here, so he's with Built Right in Rapid City. He says insurance company in my area pays no ACV and metal roofs up front. Will only pay anything after work is done. Any thoughts on that?
That's interesting. Unless it's explicitly written in the policy, unless it's 100% depreciated, I don't know how they can do that. I, I, because I mean, you're looking at a 100-year roof basically. So even if it's 50 years old, you should get half the money up front. That's interesting. I would ask the insured to write a letter to their, the adjuster and say, hey, why are you doing it this way? Where in my policy does it say you can fully depreciate my asset until the work is done? And you know, there's always the threat of liens, as much as you guys don't like doing that, but there are mechanisms there to say, hey, I need to pay my contractor to get the work started.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Well, and another thing that I just got reminded of is situations where like insurance companies are making the homeowner pay up front before they'll pay anything, or they'll make them put the money in escrow before they'll pay out a claim. I'm like, we saw that
Or
recently. I'm like,
yeah, asking for canceled checks,
yeah, they're
things
like,
like
you
that.
need to take the money, put it into escrow before we'll even pay the claim, to make sure that like the homeowner has to back the insurance agency or insurance company with the cash. It's like, I mean, who has that kind of money sitting around? It's crazy the things that they're doing. So here's the answer to the question earlier, Nick. I mean, at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to pay attention, right? And stay close to the group, stay close to professionals, stay close to each other, and we just got to pay attention. We got to communicate. We got to support one another as an industry, as adjusters, as as public adjusters, as contractors, as supplementers. We all need to just stay close and really help and support one another to make sure that we protect our industry, protect the industry that takes care of our families. And on the same note, do things the right way. Okay, stop filing claims and stop. I don't know how many times I hear this almost on a daily basis, where one of our guys will be like, we had this thing came up just the other day. Contractor came in and told a company, a big HOA, yeah, you got all this damage, you need to file a claim. We spent hours and hours on scouring these roofs, not a single hail hit. $1.9 million deductible.
Oh,
It's like, stop doing that. Like, from a homeowner's perspective, all the way up to a major job, like, stop just knocking on a door and telling somebody to file a claim when you don't have verifiable damage. Like, that is not helping you. It's not helping the industry. It's not helping the situation. Do things the right way. Make sure that it's a viable situation, viable possibility of a claim, and then go forward. And that little change is really going to help all of us. So make sure, if you are on the edge, come on, do things the right way.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, hey, Taylor, awesome to have you on. We kind of close it out with one last item. We do a golden nugget, right? And so I always make Randy go first, but pretty much something that you just want to leave the viewers with. It could be something to implement, something to look for, something to avoid. It could be something about lifestyle, like work-life balance. It doesn't really matter. Just a golden nugget. But you brought a lot of great information, so we definitely appreciate it. But Randy, you want to go first with that golden nugget?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, how do I not expand on what I was just talking about? But
Yeah, right. That is a good point.
right, but
Yeah.
in all reality, I mean, let me kind of go outside the box here a little bit. In life, I mean, all of us are chasing success. We're all trying to be, better. I would hope, if you're watching this show, if you've been paying attention, we all have, similar values and similar integrity, that we want to just be masters of our craft and be the best that we can be. If you want to do that, if you truly want to be successful, you've got to look and find and gain information from others, that people that are successful, right? Surround yourself with people that are positive, that can encourage, that you can learn and grow from. Take a look at your environment, take a look at your surroundings inside of business and outside of business, and ask yourself, are the people and is my time being spent in a way that's benefiting me to grow and to be a great leader and to be a great person, to be a great husband, to be a great father? Or am I wasting time on a bunch of bullcrap and I'm not living my life in a positive way?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't answer that question, then dig a little deeper. That's what I challenge everybody with is, we are, who we are in the background, right? You can
Yeah.
put a face on and put a mask on for so long, but at the end of the day, you are who you are behind closed doors, and evaluate who that person is from a business and a personal perspective. And if you can really bring that up and really, focus on growing and being the best version of yourself, everything else in life gets a lot easier. I promise you.
Boom. Well said, Randy. I like that a lot. Now, Taylor, what do you got to close us out with, my friend?
You gonna make me follow that?
I know, right?
Dang.
Right, I do this to every guest.
No, that was great. Very well said, Randy. I think a lot of people can identify with that for sure. I would say, drawing from the conversation today, like, become the expert. Strive to become the expert at what you do, and that means knowing every possible capacity of what you do, every aspect of it, and have conviction in it, because the people that can sell really well and do their job really well, they know their product and they have conviction behind it and they believe what they're saying, and that shows through to everybody that you talk to. It's sincerity. And you know I think it won't only help your clients, but it'll also help you in the long run, being more efficient and understanding what's a good opportunity, what isn't. Knowledge is power. There's no shortage of work out there, and if you can be an expert at honing in and identifying your ideal client and then speaking sincerely with conviction to those people, you're going to have success no matter what.
I love it. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining us on episode 161 of the Start Build Grow Show. Randy, always fun hanging out. We'll see you guys next time. And what do you say? Like, click, subscribe. What do you like to say?
Press
Y'all,
the
your
button.
press the
Press the
button,
button.
share it out,
Subscribe,
download
share
it,
out. If
fall
you love
asleep
it,
with us. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Taylor
If you
does.
love it, leave us a comment. If you hate it,
Yeah.
leave us a comment.
Yeah.
Let's get some interaction,
Yeah.
and we'll see you soon on the next episode. Thank you, and God bless.
Thanks, guys.